Also in Brussels, Turkey and Germany will ask NATO to increase its presence in the Aegean Sea. Part of the reason is to stop people smugglers who are targeting refugees. Turkey is under pressure from the EU to stop refugees from going into Europe. And Elena Casas is in Brussels with more on these meetings. Elena, hello. Now, this is the second day of talks and a lot remains to be resolved from yesterday. Tell us more about the German and Turkish request for NATO to take an active role in helping stem the refugee crisis.
Well, yesterday NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg refused to comment on whether NATO may soon be taking a more active role there. As you say, after Angela Merkel met Prime Minister Davutoglu in Ankara on Monday, the two countries made a formal request to NATO to get more involved, perhaps by starting a naval task force which could target human traffickers in the Eastern Mediterranean, or by becoming more involved on the Turkey-Syria border. But there's a great difference of opinion, at least according to Stoltenberg, among the NATO defence ministers as to whether the refugee crisis is really a defence issue at all, and therefore something that NATO ought to be tackling, or whether it's a humanitarian crisis and it's down to the EU to take concrete action. Another thing that's yet to be resolved, that we're waiting to hear about today, is just how much more NATO is likely to get involved in the fight against Daesh in Syria. There's been a formal request from the US for some of NATO's military hardware, which is already present in the region, to be engaged more fully in the fight against Daesh. The US specifically wants NATO's AWACS surveillance planes to be used more to surveil their activities in northern Syria. But again, all that Stoltenberg would say yesterday is that plenty of NATO military hardware is present in the region, but it was too soon for him to speculate on how it might be deployed.
Well, what about other partners? I mean, the defence ministries from all the countries involved in the coalition against Daesh are also meeting later. What can we expect from them?
The US is very keen to put pressure on the other countries involved in the coalition fighting Daesh to contribute more equipment and more military means and resources. They feel they've been rather isolated in their fight against Daesh in Syria. One thing that might be on the table is the US putting more pressure on Gulf countries like Saudi Arabia to make a concrete contribution on the ground. The Saudi Arabian defense minister did say last week that they might be open to the idea of deploying troops, but only if there was also a troop deployment coming from the US and other Western countries. And of course, the US and Gulf countries don't really agree on what their ultimate objective is in Syria. For Gulf countries, it's still the government of Bashar al-Assad that is their real enemy in the region, rather than Daesh, which is of course the American priority. So at that meeting later today, they'll be trying to come to an agreement on what exactly their military priority should be in Syria, and how the 28 countries of that anti-Daesh coalition can unify their resources to try and fight back more strongly. As NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said yesterday, Russia's ongoing airstrikes on Aleppo have really changed the strategic balance on the ground. They've left the US and its allies with rather fewer options than there were a month ago.
Elena, thanks for that.